Exclusive. Yeah, stop playing on me. Exclusive.
We are starting tonight with some breaking news. Right now, we know the names of the suspect and the victim who died in a crash on Garners Ferry Road. This happened Saturday morning. The Richland County Coroner's Office has identified the suspect as 36-year-old Antavius Brown and the victim as 52-year-old Ryan Haman. We're also learning new details from Columbia Police on what led up to this crash. Our Josie Frost has the details.
We saw a white Charger come flying up Garners Ferry, and we saw like the back end of his bumper messed up. So we was like, okay, he's definitely in a high-speed chase.
Today is the day I die. Those words, broadcast live to hundreds of followers as police lights flash in the rearview mirror. A gun on the passenger's seat. Speedometer climbing past 90. I'm gonna make them kill me, y'all. December 28th, 2024. What started as a domestic dispute in Columbia, South Carolina, would end with 2 men dead, a community shattered, and a woman fighting for her life in a hospital bed. Her desperate words to medical staff still hanging in the air. Don't let him kill the kids. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. I'm your host, and today we're breaking down a case that exploded across social media just months ago. A man who decided to turn his final moments into a public spectacle. A high-speed chase that ended in blood and twisted metal, and the innocent victims caught in the crossfire of one man's violent final act. This isn't just another crime story. This is about the moment private rage becomes public destruction, about what happens when a relationship implodes and takes others down with it. Antavius Brown was 36 years old when he decided December 28th would be his last day on Earth, but he wasn't planning to go alone. His ex-girlfriend was already bleeding from a gunshot wound. Her children were potentially next on his list, and Ryan Haman, a 52-year-old man who happened to be driving through an intersection at the wrong moment, had no idea his life was about to end because of a stranger's rage. What makes someone decide to broadcast their final violent acts to the world? And most importantly, could anyone have stopped this deadly chain of events before it claimed innocent lives? The answers lie in the text messages, the Facebook Live video, and the frantic words of a wounded woman fighting to save her children. This is the story of Antavius Brown's final broadcast. Columbia, South Carolina, a city of about 137,000 people, home to the University of South Carolina, the state capital, and a thriving local music scene. It's here that Antavius Gerald Brown was born on October 5, 1988. By all accounts, his early years were marked by both struggle and ambition. Friends described him as talented but troubled. A man with dreams bigger than his circumstances. At 16, Brown found his voice through music. It became his outlet, his identity, his escape. But life had other plans. In 2008, Brown suffered a devastating blow when his brother, Christian Perry, died. Those close to Brown say this loss changed him fundamentally. The grief carved something new into him, a darkness that would surface years later. By 2013, Brown's life had taken another turn. He was sentenced to prison, where he would remain until 2020. 7 years behind bars, 7 years watching the world move on without him. When he finally walked free, Brown was determined to rebuild. He reconnected with the local music scene, collaborating with artists like Mr. 14 and Little Spida 3. He performed in Atlanta. He gave interviews. He was featured on podcasts. To many, it looked like Antavius Brown was finally getting his second chance. But second chances are fragile things. Cross Hill Apartments sits just off Blossom Street in Columbia. It's a modern complex with balconies overlooking a central courtyard. The kind of place young professionals and small families call home. The kind of place where neighbors might wave, but don't necessarily know each other's business. It's here that Brown moved in with his girlfriend and her children. For 2 years, they built a life together in apartment 307. From the outside, things appeared stable, but inside those walls, a different story was unfolding. 2 weeks before Christmas 2024, the relationship ended. The details of the breakup remain private, but what we do know is this. Despite the split, Brown continued living in the apartment. He promised to move out by New Year's. Just a few more days under the same roof, then they could both move on. But moving on isn't always that simple. December 28, 2024. The holiday decorations are still up. The new year is just days away. And inside apartment 307, tensions are reaching a breaking point. According to police reports, the morning began with an accusation. Brown confronted his ex-girlfriend, claiming she had been unfaithful. Words escalated to shouting. Shouting escalated to violence. Her children watched as the argument intensified. They witnessed Brown's rage building, his control slipping. When their mother tried to escape with them, Brown pulled out a gun. The shot echoed through the apartment. The bullet tore through the woman's leg. Blood on the carpet, children screaming, and Brown, suddenly faced with the reality of what he'd done, made a decision that would set the day's deadly events in motion. Instead of calling 911, he forced his bleeding ex-girlfriend into his car. The children were left behind in the apartment, temporarily spared from the violence, but for how long? As Brown drove toward MUSC Hospital, the situation inside the car grew increasingly volatile. According to the victim's later statement, Brown alternated between threats and apologies. One moment pointing the gun at her, the next moment at himself. The gun moved from his lap to the passenger seat and back again. A deadly pendulum swinging with each traffic light. "I should just kill us both," he reportedly told her as they pulled into the hospital parking lot. "This is it for me, anyway." When they arrived at the emergency entrance, Brown escorted his ex-girlfriend inside. Blood soaked through her pants, pain etched across her face. But it was fear for her children, not herself, that consumed her thoughts. As medical staff rushed to treat her wound, she saw her opportunity. With Brown momentarily distracted, she leaned toward a nurse and whispered the words that would later appear in police reports. "He shot me. Please don't tell him I told you, but he's the one who shot me." And then the desperate plea that would later become the emotional center of this case. "He's going to go back to the house. Please don't let him kill the kids." Hospital staff immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Security was quietly alerted, police were called, and as medical professionals worked to stabilize the gunshot wound, they also worked to keep Brown in the building until authorities could arrive. But Brown sensed something was wrong. Perhaps he noticed the sudden increase in security personnel. Perhaps he saw the way the medical staff were communicating with each other. Whatever tipped him off, he made his move. By the time police arrived at MUSC Hospital, Antavius Brown was already gone, and now he was armed, desperate, and heading back toward the apartment where the children were waiting. The clock was ticking, but here's where this case takes its first unexpected turn. Brown didn't drive straight back to Cross Hill Apartments. Instead, police tracked his cell phone to a location behind a business on Leesburg Road, in the opposite direction from where the children were staying. Why the change in course? What was going through Brown's mind in those crucial moments after fleeing the hospital? We may never know for certain. But what happened next suggests Brown had made a decision. This wasn't going to be a quiet ending. This wasn't going to be a private tragedy. Whatever happened next, the world would be watching. Because as police closed in on his location, Antavius Brown did something that transformed this case from a domestic violence incident into something uniquely modern and disturbing. He pulled out his phone, opened Facebook, and hit Go Live. Suddenly, hundreds of followers received notifications that Antavius Brown was broadcasting live. Many clicked, expecting to see him performing music or hanging out with friends. Instead, they became unwitting witnesses to the final moments of a man who had decided to die, and to take his audience with him on that journey. This is where I need to pause and ask you something. In an age where anyone can broadcast anything at any time, we're increasingly becoming witnesses to real-time tragedies. From mass shootings to taking his own life, from police brutality to domestic violence. The line between viewer and witness has blurred, so I want to know, Have you ever stumbled across a live stream that turned dark or dangerous? Did you stay and watch or click away? And most importantly, what responsibility do you think viewers have when they find themselves watching a crime or crisis unfold in real time? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This isn't just about Brown's case, it's about how social media is changing our relationship with crime, trauma, and responsibility. Now let's get back to December 28th and the live stream that hundreds couldn't look away from. To understand what happened on December 28th, we need to understand what was happening in the weeks and days leading up to it. According to friends who spoke with local media, the 2-year relationship between Brown and his girlfriend had been deteriorating for months. The specific causes remain private, but those close to the situation described increasing tension, arguments that would start small and explode into shouting matches, and periods where communication broke down entirely. 2 weeks before the shooting, she finally ended things, but with the holidays approaching and housing options limited, they agreed Brown could stay until January 1st. 7 more days under the same roof. 7 days that would never come. This arrangement, exes living together after a breakup, creates what psychologists call a pressure cooker environment. Every interaction carries the weight of the failed relationship. Every glance can be misinterpreted. Every text message can become evidence of perceived betrayal. December 27th, the day before the shooting, Brown's social media activity showed nothing unusual. He posted about upcoming music projects, he shared memes, he commented on friends' posts. Nothing to suggest what would unfold just hours later. But overnight, something changed. According to text messages later recovered by investigators, Brown became convinced his ex was seeing someone new. Whether this was true or a product of his imagination remains unclear. What is clear is that by morning, his suspicion had hardened into certainty. The children later told police they woke up to shouting. They described seeing Brown pacing the apartment, checking his ex-girlfriend's phone, demanding to know who she had been talking to. They described their mother trying to de-escalate, trying to get them ready for the day as if nothing was wrong. Then came the physical confrontation. The children described seeing Brown grab their mother, push her against a wall, and eventually pull out a gun. They described trying to help her, trying to get between the adults. They described the sound of the gunshot and the sight of their mother bleeding. What the children didn't see was what happened next in the car. But the victim later told police that during the drive to the hospital, Brown swung between rage and remorse. One moment threatening to kill her, the next moment apologizing and promising to get her help. One moment speeding through traffic, the next moment talking about ending his own life. This pattern, violence followed by remorse followed by more violence, is textbook in cases of domestic abuse. It's what experts call the cycle of violence, and it often accelerates over time. What starts as verbal abuse escalates to physical confrontation, which escalates to weapons, which escalates to potentially lethal violence. By the time they reached the hospital, Brown had made statements suggesting he was contemplating what police called deliberately provoking law enforcement into using deadly force. "They're going to kill me for this," he reportedly told his ex-girlfriend as they pulled into the hospital parking lot. "And maybe that's what I want." These words would prove prophetic, though not in the way anyone might have expected. As medical staff treated the gunshot wound, they followed protocol for domestic violence cases, separating the victim from the suspected abuser, discreetly alerting security, and contacting police. But they also did something crucial. They listened when the victim expressed fear not for herself, but for her children. "Please don't let him kill the kids." Those 6 words set off immediate alarm bells. Hospital security moved to detain Brown, but he sensed the trap closing. He slipped out a side entrance, got back into his car and drove away, just minutes before police arrived. And now, armed and increasingly desperate, Antavius Brown was loose in Colombia, with nothing left to lose. The hospital security cameras caught Brown's exit at 11:17 a.m. He moved quickly but didn't run, walking purposefully through the sliding doors and into the parking lot. To anyone watching, he might have looked like any other hospital visitor heading to his car, but inside, he had just made a decision that would seal his fate. Police arrived at the hospital at 11:23 a.m., just 6 minutes after Brown left. They immediately took the victim's statement and put out an APB on Brown and his vehicle. They also did something that would prove crucial. They dispatched officers to Cross Hill Apartments to secure the children's safety. By 11:30 a.m., the children were under police protection. Whatever Brown's intentions had been, he would not have the chance to carry them out. But where was Brown during these critical minutes? Cell phone data later revealed that after leaving the hospital, he drove not toward the apartment, but to a commercial area on Leesburg Road. He parked behind a business out of sight from the main road. And it was here, sitting in his parked car, that Brown made two fateful decisions. First, he loaded a fresh magazine into his handgun. Second, he opened Facebook on his phone and prepared to go live. At 11:42 a.m., the first ping from law enforcement's tracking system located Brown's phone. By 11:45 a.m., the first patrol cars were closing in on his location, and at 11:47 a.m., Antavius Brown hit the Go Live button and began broadcasting to his followers. "They found me," were his first words on the live stream, "but they ain't taking me in." As police vehicles appeared in the distance, Brown started his engine, put his phone in a mount on the dashboard, and began what would become his final drive. The live stream had begun, and hundreds were now watching. This brings me to my second question for you. When someone broadcasts their crimes or final moments, who bears responsibility? The platform that provides the technology, the viewers who keep watching, the person behind the camera? Facebook has policies against self-harm and violence, but live streams are difficult to moderate in real time. By the time content reviewers were alerted to Brown's broadcast, the tragedy had already unfolded. So I want to know your thoughts. Should platforms be held accountable when their technology is used to broadcast violence? Or is this simply the dark side of a technology that also brings positive connection and transparency? Share your perspective in the comments. The conversation around technology and crime is just beginning, and your voice matters. Now let's return to Brown's live stream and the chase that was about to begin. Y'all about to see some real shit today. Those were Brown's words as he pulled out from behind the business on Leesburg Road, his phone now streaming live to an audience that grew with each passing minute. What had started with a few dozen viewers quickly swelled to hundreds as friends shared the link and word spread that something was happening. The first police cruiser appeared in frame at 11:49 a.m. Lights flashing but sirens still silent, a sign they were hoping for a peaceful resolution. An officer on a loudspeaker instructed Brown to pull over. His response, captured forever on the live stream: "Not happening today, not going back inside. Not ever." And with that he accelerated, running a red light and officially beginning what would become a high-speed chase through the streets of Columbia. The live stream captured it all. Brown weaving through traffic, police cruisers multiplying behind him, his speedometer climbing, marketing 60, 70, 80 miles per hour on city streets, all while he narrated his own pursuit. "They think I'm afraid to die," he told his viewers, occasionally glancing at the comments appearing on screen. "I've been ready. Today is just the day it happens." Viewers watched as he ran red light after red light. They saw him narrowly miss pedestrians. They heard him alternating between rage at his ex-girlfriend, apologies to his family, and defiance toward the police now in pursuit. At one point, he held up the gun to the camera. "This is how it ends," he said. "Either they shoot me or I do it myself. But I'm not going back to prison." The reference to prison to going back inside reveals a critical piece of Brown's mindset. Having spent 7 years incarcerated, the prospect of returning to prison for shooting his ex-girlfriend may have been the trigger that pushed him toward his final, fatal decisions. As the chase continued, police deployed spike strips on Garner's Ferry Road, a major thoroughfare in Columbia. Brown spotted them and swerved, avoiding the trap, but nearly losing control of his vehicle in the process. "Almost got me," he laughed to his audience, which had now grown to over 500 viewers. They gotta try harder than that. The comment section of the live stream became a horrifying Greek chorus to the unfolding tragedy. Some viewers begged Brown to stop and surrender. Others encouraged the chaos. Some tagged friends to come watch. Others tried to alert police to what was happening. And through it all, Brown continued driving, continued talking, continued on his collision course with destiny. At 12:03 p.m., the chase approached the intersection of Garner's Ferry Road and Hazelwood Road. Brown was now traveling at speeds exceeding 90 miles per hour. Police had created distance, following department policy for high-speed pursuits in populated areas. Helicopter support had been requested, but hadn't yet arrived. As Brown approached the intersection, the light turned red. Cross-traffic began moving through. And here, the live stream captured the moment that would transform this from a chase to a tragedy. "I'm sorry for whoever's in that intersection," Brown said, seconds before impact. "But I told y'all, today is the day." Viewers watched in horror as Brown's Nissan Altima blew through the red light at full speed. For a split second, another vehicle, a white SUV, appeared in frame. Then came the impact. The phone went flying. The screen went black. But the audio continued recording. The sounds of crushing metal, car alarms, distant screams, and then a single gunshot. The live stream continued broadcasting for another 3 minutes before Facebook systems finally cut the feed. Those final minutes captured only darkness and the growing wail of emergency vehicles arriving at the scene. What viewers couldn't see was the devastation at the intersection. Brown's Nissan had T-boned a white Ford Explorer driven by 52-year-old Ryan Haman. The impact was catastrophic. Haman, who had been driving home with his dog after a morning hike, was pronounced dead at the scene. His dog also died in the crash. A third vehicle was damaged in the collision, and its driver sustained non-life-threatening injuries. As for Brown, first responders found him still alive but with a gunshot wound to his abdomen, apparently self-inflicted in the moments after the crash. The gun was still in his hand. Emergency medical personnel rushed Brown to the same hospital where, just an hour earlier, he had dropped off his ex-girlfriend. Doctors fought to save his life, but the combination of crash injuries and the gunshot wound proved fatal. Antavius Brown was pronounced dead at 12:32 p.m., less than an hour after his live stream began. In just 45 minutes, a domestic dispute had escalated to a shooting, a police chase, a fatal crash, and ultimately 2 deaths, and hundreds of people had watched it unfold in real time on their phones and computers. The live stream, though removed from Facebook, had already been recorded and saved by numerous viewers. Within hours, clips were circulating on other platforms. By evening, local news was reporting on both the tragedy and the disturbing broadcast that had documented it. Columbia, South Carolina was left to grapple with a very modern horror, a crime that was not only committed, but performed for an online audience. The intersection of Garner's Ferry and Hazelwood Roads became an impromptu memorial in the days following the crash. Flowers for Ryan Haman appeared first, placed by friends, family, and strangers moved by the random tragedy that had claimed his life. Haman, it turned out, was beloved in the community. A father, a volunteer basketball coach, and an avid outdoorsman who had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. His dog, a golden retriever named Cooper, had been his constant companion for 8 years. Ryan was the guy who would give you the shirt off his back, his brother told local news. He never met a stranger. And now he's gone because someone he never even knew made a terrible choice. The memorial grew to include candles, photographs, and handwritten notes, some addressed to Haman, some addressed to Cooper, and eventually a few addressed to Brown as well, mostly from friends in the music community who struggled to reconcile the person they knew with the man who had live-streamed his final violent act. At the Musk Hospital, Brown's ex-girlfriend underwent surgery for her gunshot wound. She survived, but the physical and emotional recovery would be long and difficult. Her children, though physically unharmed, had witnessed violence no child should ever see. They began working with trauma counselors specialized in helping young witnesses to domestic violence. The woman later released a statement through her attorney asking for privacy and expressing profound sorrow for Haman's death. "My heart breaks for Mr. Haman's family," she wrote. "Their loss is immeasurable, and I will carry that weight forever." As for the digital aftermath, Facebook quickly removed all copies of the live stream from their platform, citing policies against content that glorifies violence or self-harm. But the internet never truly forgets. Copies continued to circulate on other platforms, forcing content moderators into a game of digital whack-a-mole. Law enforcement faced questions too. Should they have pursued Brown differently? Could they have ended the chase before it reached that fatal intersection? The Columbia Police Department defended their actions, noting that they had followed department policy by maintaining distance during the high-speed portions of the chase. "This was a no-win situation," the police chief said at a press conference. "We had an armed suspect who had already shot one person and threatened others. Public safety was our primary concern throughout." The funeral for Ryan Haman was held on January 3, 2025. Hundreds attended, including members of the basketball teams he had coached and colleagues from his job as an engineering consultant. The service celebrated a life of kindness, service, and joy, a life cut short by a tragedy he never saw coming. Antavius Brown's funeral was held a week later, on January 10th. It was a smaller affair, attended primarily by family and close friends. His obituary made no mention of how he died, focusing instead on his passion for music and the people who would miss him. 2 funerals, 2 lives ended, and between them, a web of questions about domestic violence, mental health, social media, and the thin line between private pain and public spectacle. In the months since, Columbia has begun to heal. The physical evidence of the crash has been cleared away. Traffic flows normally through the intersection again. But for those who were there, and for those who watched online, the memories remain vivid. And for platforms like Facebook, police departments, and domestic violence prevention organizations, the case of Antavius Brown has become both a warning and a call to action. Because in our connected world, private tragedies can become public spectacles in an instant. And once that happens, there's no going back. So what do we take away from this case? What lessons can we learn from the tragic final broadcast of Antavius Brown? First, this case highlights how quickly domestic violence can escalate from threats to deadly action. The time between the initial shooting at the apartment and the fatal crash was just over an hour. 1 hour that changed countless lives forever. Second, it forces us to confront the role of social media in modern crime. Brown's decision to livestream his final moments wasn't unique. We've seen similar broadcasts from mass shooters, self-harm, and other violent incidents. These live streams create a disturbing new category of crime: violence as performance, death as content. Third, it raises questions about how we balance public safety with the pursuit of justice. High-speed chases put innocent people at risk, as Ryan Haman's death tragically demonstrates. But allowing armed and dangerous suspects to escape creates its own risks. And finally, it reminds us that behind every headline, every viral video, every sensational case, are real human beings with complex lives and stories. Antavius Brown was more than his final violent acts. Ryan Haman was more than a victim. They were people with dreams, flaws, loved ones, and futures that will now never be realized. Before we end today's episode, I want to ask you one final question. What do you think could have prevented this tragedy? Was there a moment when intervention might have changed the outcome? A system that failed, a warning sign missed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone recognize the warning signs in their own life or the lives of those they care about. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please remember that help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-700-999-SAFE. You don't have to face it alone. There are people ready to listen and help. This has been Shadows of Crime. I'm your host, and I'll be back with another case. Until then, stay safe, stay aware,